Hi, Catherine. Hi, Jason.
Good evening.
How you feeling, Catherine?
Awful, but it's just part of the, no one tells you that being 37 weeks pregnant and sick is like a whole different experience.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And they're like, "Oh, do you want some medicine for that? Because you can't have
You can't
anything."
have it.
We are broadcasting
Oh, okay.
and recording, so in case you have how much personal you want to share.
I was about to say, are we recording it?
Yes.
Okay, then I'll save it for next time. But thank you for asking. I'll be
Yeah,
very.
well, with half of your ailments.
Hey, Andre.
Hi, Andre. Like, it's likely.
Hello.
It's in this room. If you wanna come over, you don't
So
have
I
to.
do wanna. You're
Are you
asking
afraid
a
of-
lot of my,
Are you afraid to touch the owl?
well, I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna get to it in the middle of the table. I am concerned that the owl is not.
Showing us.
We're just working on getting you guys cannot see us, correct?
No, we can. Well, I see three of you. If there's other people in the room, no.
Okay.
But you can't see, can you see City Hall?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Is it just the three of you in the room?
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw you.
All right.
Well, now we don't.
I put my hand was over it.
Maybe it's just.
Well, I
our
really
size.
enjoy seeing my own face, but I guess this will do.
That's our narcissism.
Nothing like a close up from the owl camera to really make you feel good. All right.
Jason has wandered off, but let's go ahead and get started. This is the monthly meeting of the Advisory Committee on Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Human Rights. Today is October 29th. And for all the members in the room and on Zoom, let's just go ahead and introduce ourselves for the meeting minutes. I'm Leanna Fellis, Chair.
Katie Bryden, Vice Chair. And that's it in the room, for members. So Catherine, do you want to start?
Yeah. Hello, member.
Hi, Andre Chassé, member.
Jason Caniff, member.
And Debbie Laurie, I'm the city manager.
Beautiful, thank you so much. We do have enough for quorum, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to the approval of the September 24th meeting minutes. Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Awesome. Were there any changes or anything that need to be clarified in the meeting minutes?
Nope.
Oh, none from Andre, none from Catherine. Katie, I know you took the minutes. Was there anything you wanted to add?
They look great.
They looked beautiful.
Fabulous minutes.
So I do need to get approval from everyone because we're on Zoom. So
Yes.
we'll need to get you to vote on the meeting minutes, approve. We'll start out on Zoom. So if Catherine, you want to start, and then we'll go around and we'll come here.
I approve.
Thank you.
I approve.
Approved?
Approved.
I approve as well. The meeting minutes have passed. Okay, so first on the agenda tonight, under the education topic, is an update on the encampment closure. For that, we're gonna turn it over to Debbie.
Yeah, so I know last month you had the opportunity to meet the new homeless response manager
Yes.
and have some conversations, and since last month, I'm assuming you have seen the news. But I just wanted to kind of quickly recap a couple of updates that we've done. So on October 16th. Hey, how are ya?
I made it.
Yay.
If you want to just announce who you are for the meeting minutes.
Yes, Gabrielle and member.
Thank you so
Wiley,
much.
member.
We are just starting the meeting. We are talking about the encampment closure update.
Okay.
So on October 16th, we did announce that we are going to prioritize the encampment along Cleveland Street within our community. And in so doing, we've set a closure date for December 31st of 2023.
24?
I'm sorry, 2024.
No, I understand.
Good gracious.
Sorry, can you say that date again?
December 31st.
December 31st. Thank you.
So, we've had folks working with staff who's been providing services to resident encampment residents for all summer. And we did, become concerned about the health and safety of individuals on this location. We actually are gonna proceed in partnership with service providers and stakeholders. We're gonna utilize best practices and with as much support for encampment residents as current resources available will allow. We considered the impact on the well-being of individuals within the encampment as well as the community as a whole. We have, we have a presence of known drug trafficking. We've got activities that risk, increased risk of public health. And we're concerned about allegations of violence that occur among encampment residents. All of these were contributing factors for us establishing a date specific. The process we're gonna do is gonna rely upon our ability to connect residents with housing and supportive services. We are gonna minimize and mitigate the need for criminalization of any activities related to homelessness. There are things that we are working, common barriers that we hear when we interact with folks. We're working on how to account for storage of personal items, how to perhaps facilitate, family units being able to remain together inside in a way, and obviously pets. So I think we have found the solution for the personal storage items, and I believe we are close to resolving the issue of folks being able to be together. And fingers crossed, I think we also have pets. So we're gonna work and build around the work Outreach is already doing, working with direct service providers and leverage all of our relationships across agencies and impassioned, interested individuals in our community and other organizations. We anticipate that winter will create some sort of an additional incentive as well, to continue to encourage folks to move inside in some ways. So right now, there are 73 known individuals, 22 of whom are engaging regularly with outreach services, 31 who engage partially, and 20 who are not engaged at all. Regular engagement means folks are making their appointment, consistently connecting with those who are supporting them, completing housing applications, rental viewings, whatever it may be. Partial engagement, it's usually engaging when they need to secure rights to appointments, but doesn't consistently check in. We know that the path to stable permanent housing for someone who is experiencing unsheltered homelessness, particularly within this encampment, is not always linear. Their engagement levels are fluid and change based on any and all internal and external barriers an individual may be experiencing. We recognize and value the relationships between individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness, as well as the agencies and organizations working to provide assistance. So what we do know is in the coming months, actually on Friday, the first warming shelter opens. So in the winter months, we have 2 overnight warming shelters, and during the day, there are 2 opportunities for, overnight and 2 daytime opportunities. We also know that we have 41 units of permanent supportive housing coming online. And while it may not be a direct road for an individual who's currently unhoused into one of those units, perhaps it creates movement in the citywide system itself. So we're gonna look at every opportunity to bring someone inside, whatever that may be, and whatever maybe fits where they are at the moment. It could be permanent housing, it could be shelter, it could be transitional housing, it could be supportive housing, it could be a reunification opportunity, and it could be a warming center. So we have no predetermined checklist, if you will, that if this, then that, and it's going to be personalized to the individuals. So that was kind of the announcement that we made mid-October. To that end, we were committed to creating a community partnership opportunity, and those meetings happened last week. So last Wednesday was the first partners meeting. And we had, I believe it was 70 participants, from organizations, and from interested parties, and of course, representing encampment, residents as well. So we spent quite a bit of time kind of hearing out their questions and their thoughts. Residents of the encampment had a lot of questions, so we really listened to them, but it was the space for people to share and to hear. And from that, we're gonna create some smaller work groups. So for example, I think we've nearly finalized the smaller subgroup that's gonna work on housing. Interestingly enough, we actually had a landlord reach out who saw all of this and said, hey, what can I do to help?
Wow.
So having this conversation and making it a priority in our community is gonna help us galvanize resources to help move people from outside and on their pathway to stable housing, whatever that may look like. What we also hope is that it will provide an what we also hope is it will provide an opportunity to strengthen those relationships so that we can replicate that work elsewhere. But we've determined that this is our priority. On Thursday, those individuals who were doing work within the encampment actually had an on-site meeting with encampment residents as well, to kind of have another opportunity to have more participation, answer any questions or that folks may have and hear what they have to share for feedback. So reactions are across the board, but what we do know is for us as a community, it's a priority. So that's what we're moving forward. I think the second partner meeting is tomorrow. And again, some of those subgroups are getting set up. So later this week, we had really good luck, with Bangor Water. I don't know if everybody knows this, but hydrants are pumped dry in the winter. Because if water's left in them, they will freeze and expand and freeze
It
and
looks pretty cool
contract.
when it happens.
So, well, I'm not sure it's cool, but.
And terrible, but it looks cool.
So we did work with Bangor Water to keep the water on, but that is gonna go off at the end of, at the end of this week because the temperatures are such. We are also be placing, signs, I believe were posted today. And outreach was on site so that we made sure that folks knew that we're working on. The work group and the partners will work on what the next, potential opportunity is. And this Friday, we will also be placing notices around the site, so that everyone is aware that this area will be closed December 31st. And on that, we provide, phone numbers and access to resources so that if people want to connect with case management, if they want to talk to a triage line, if they want to look for a general assistance opportunity, that they have the opportunity to do that. So, making sure that we keep people well informed, and being very, very transparent about everything we do. So just wanted to provide that update because I know you had talked to Jenna and a lot's happened.
Yeah.
So, questions and comments from the committee? I suspect there's some.
How are they gonna, is there gonna be like police presence for those that refuse to leave, or what's their plan for those that they don't have a place to, I know the goal is to get everybody out, all 70, but
Yep. And I think we'll know more about what that plan needs to look like the closer we get. I'm gonna sit here and tell you, we don't have a prescribed plan for worst case or best case scenario. What we've committed to as a community is to come together and to address the needs of every individual that we come in contact with. So if it comes to that, whatever the, I'll continue to keep the committee, and we're doing it at the council meetings and agenda meeting and committee meetings updated on any progress. There will be no surprises.
Is this unprecedented in Bangor? And if so, are there other communities in Maine that we're looking to for like how-tos and worst case scenarios?
Yeah, so it is an unprecedented in the state. So we did something similar when HUD Technical Assistance was here back in April of 20.
Was that Valley View?
Yeah, 23, it was Valley Avenue. So we did similar work. That was the first time that the city had undertaken that kind of work, and I'm not aware of other communities in the state who had taken sort of an approach, but I think it was after that.
It could be Portland.
Portland did some, but it
has
was,
cleaned
but I
out.
think that was
I shouldn't
after.
use that phrase.
Correct.
They have certain areas they were trying
Right.
to target for safety purposes.
Correct. But I think that was like in the winter, especially last year. But anyway, so we did the work with HUD Technical Assistance. They came on and they said, you know, here's the process. You've got to intensify your resources into this location. And so when we did the work along Valley Avenue, at the end, we had about 20 folks who we were looking to house. And we had multiple agencies because HUD was in town. It was an opportunity to hear, to listen, to learn. So we had a lot of folks really working in that area. And it is, what it is you divide the list of who's there and you're there every day interacting. And so that has been happening for the last 4 months at this point, behind, on Cleveland Street. And then HUD's perspective is everybody goes into permanent housing. And so we did manage to get most folks inside, off Valley Avenue. But the problem became is their ability to sustain it and not recognizing that permanent housing may be a good solution for some, but it may not be the right solution for all. So that's why when we're looking at the work this time, we're trying to be really open about what the best opportunity is for housing. We want people to be successful. And that's our goal. So that's why it looks a little bit different this year. We've been doing this work since they left Valley Avenue. We've had outreach doing a lot of this work, but we've made it a primary emphasis for that outreach contractors for the last 4 months. And we've got to put a date on it. And the date brings the sense of urgency and it brings others to the table. And I think that was clearly demonstrated by the amount of folks who reached out and participated. To your point about where it's been done in other locations. So Sanford did something similar to Leanna's point. Portland had 2 or 3 initiatives as well. And I believe Waterville did something similar. So yes, it has, the work we're gonna do is gonna look very much like the work that was done in other places.
Thanks, Debbie.
Yeah,
Thank you, and thanks for this report. I'm curious about looking at the model and taking what we learned from Valley Ave. I don't want to cast doubt on any
Understood.
goals, but is there a perceived success rate with what Sanford and Waterville and Portland have seen and how we can ensure? It seems that as from a bird's eye view,
Yep.
right, not being in the thick of it, sometimes encampment closures, especially like that on Valley Ave, feels like it's just sort of shuffling people. And that those individuals like I think 20 that you said that don't want to receive support are just going to go somewhere else.
Yep.
So what's the plan for those individuals?
Well, the plan will be, we're gonna offer you every opportunity and every service that we can. And in the end, there is such a thing as free will.
Yeah, right.
But folks will not be allowed to stay there.
Okay. Okay.
We have to close the area. We have individuals, so what we need to create, so one of the other subgroups we're trying to talk about is how we provide a peer-to-peer network.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of
Yeah.
times when folks come out of the encampment, and we've got some right now that we've gotten into housing, is they're really struggling to stay in their housing because they've lost a sense of community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so how are we gonna replicate community in a different way that enables them to be more successful in their housing and
Yeah.
to be stable in
Yeah.
their housing?
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Do you have anything?
Yeah, so I'm thinking about this, and so I understand we do have that former motel that it's been getting renovated into
Yeah.
transitional housing. So is the idea for most of the folks at Camp Hope to be going there? Or where
It's
exactly?
unlikely.
Okay, so where are they going?
So, but
And
if,
how are we trying to keep these
Right.
communities together?
so if it's 41 units of housing,
Right,
let's say that some individuals are a good fit for that housing, that's great.
Mhm.
Let's say there are some individuals in transitional housing that are a good fit, okay. That opens up transitional housing spots that could be filled by someone who's currently outside. Let's say it's somebody in a shelter that's a good fit for, then that opens up a shelter spot for somebody to go inside. So the system itself has been stuck.
Yeah, and
So if
that's,
we can get movement so that we have different opportunities to be able to bring somebody inside in the setting that is going to help them be most successful, that's kind of what we're looking for,
Right.
whatever it may be.
right, so again, like my concern is, because I know we've tried to do this multiple times.
Right.
And what we do is we end up trying to find housing for these people. We can't find housing for all of them because we don't have enough housing here in
Right.
Bangor for everybody,
Right.
and certainly not enough that meets the needs. And some of these folks may not like the housing that's being offered to them because
Right.
maybe it's not adequate, maybe they don't feel safe.
Yep.
And then you've also got the issue of for some of them, they don't qualify for the housing that may be potentially available because maybe the landlords will not accept them due to their histories.
Yep.
So how are we overcoming that?
So we're overcoming it by one person at a time and one relationship at a time. I
Yeah,
can tell you that we've gotten individuals into housing.
yeah. Well,
And
I
we've
know
done
we
it this,
have,
no, I mean, within the
But-
last 2 weeks.
but you're saying we've got a total of 73
Correct.
that are still unhoused.
This was from a couple of weeks ago, so I
Okay.
don't know what so I don't know what the new number is.
Okay,
We've gotten folks into detox.
yeah,
We've gotten folks into detox and then into sober living.
yeah.
So we've done a lot.
And those are great programs, but
Correct.
they're still not permanent solutions.
No, but they got somebody inside
Yeah,
and hopefully on a way to becoming more stable housing.
right. And like, and that is good. That is something.
All we can do is support people to come inside,
Yeah,
get resource adjacent wherever that may be,
right,
so that they have access to the services and supports that they need
right.
to be successful. In the end, there is free will as to whether or not an individual is positioned
Mhm.
and ready
Right.
to take whatever step they
And
may need to do.
With that free will, they're
Correct.
also losing their community, and that community, like, I know
Correct.
what you're saying, it's
Correct.
about trying to rebuild some of the community that
Correct.
might be lost.
Correct.
But for people who don't have trust,
Yeah.
that takes more than the allotted timeline that we have.
But the trust has been built with the outreach over months of
Right.
work, so they do know the relationships.
Yeah,
And we're gonna protect those relationships wherever we can. So for example, if individuals have, I'm trying to think of the non-acronym name. Permanent supportive housing. So if individuals have permanent supportive housing vouchers or BRAP vouchers, bridging rental assistance vouchers, you can layer vouchers into a unit. So you can take 2 individuals, put them into a 2-bedroom unit because that's their community. And if they have housing assistance, both can be in there together.
okay,
So we're just gonna have to get creative,
okay.
but we're
And-
very mindful of the relationships
Okay,
that exist there.
and how about, how that works within the community and the amount of stigma that people who are unhoused currently face by, people who are housed and people who own properties, like, has that been an issue in trying to get
has
people
not.
housed so far?
We have not, we have one person who is uncomfortable in their residence. And so we're working with that individual and the landlord to swap units.
Okay,
And so we are sticking with, the key is you've gotta have the supports that are willing to follow and able to follow. Because this person is having a struggle, we're here for you, how are we gonna help facilitate and rectify that? Because we want you to be housed successfully. And the good news is the landlord that we've had a long-term relationship with, so we're able to work with the landlord and facilitate both sides.
good,
So,
okay,
but it is unfortunate, fortunately and unfortunately, it's about relationships and it's having every conversation. What's the problem today? Making sure that we're following up.
Mhm.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
And if not everyone does end up in supportive housing, how are they going to be, I don't wanna say kept track of, but how are you going to ensure people don't fall through the cracks?
part of the conversation that actually came up last week,
Okay,
and it came up with the encampment. So a number of the residents, so for example, there's medical services that go out
Mhm.
twice a week.
Yeah, also the Hope House is literally right there.
Correct.
Yeah.
But a lot of folks are really hesitant to go walk down to the Hope House. They're concerned about leaving their items
Yep.
because their items are destroyed or missing when they come back. And that's not okay either.
Yeah.
So there is actually medical outreach that goes up and works with them every week. And Amy West is the outreach medical provider, and she made it very clear. We will know where you are. We will facilitate that, and you will not lose track of us. The service providers are going to follow.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, as long as people don't get misplaced, because I know that that has happened
I'm sure it is.
in other, camp closures because people no longer have the same place to go to anymore. Yeah,
We're gonna do everything we can to not lose anyone through the cracks, because that can't happen.
Not to get morbid, but has there been anybody who's like lost their life in the middle of the winter time for lack of housing in Bangor? And I'm asking that question not to be morbid, but like
No.
there's what we know across a lot of different sectors of social service work, that there are a pretty predictable percentage of people who will just not accept help, who will be resistant. And I do appreciate you mentioned that, Debbie, like there's just going to be free will, and then there's going to be nothing we can do outside of like brute force. I'm just wondering that like we have this deadline coming up, and where resistance or denial of any services meets the pressure of sub-zero temperatures. That's the kind of space I think that some of us are thinking about, and I guess I'm just wondering, has that happened before in Bangor? And I don't know, maybe that's a conversation we can have in the future, but I certainly would be concerned about the handful of folks in January who
Correct.
just
Yep.
Yep.
I'm not familiar with anyone who has passed from exposure, any unhoused individuals who have passed from exposure in the winter. I'm just not aware of any. Do we have folks that pass away outdoors in the winter? You bet.
Yeah.
But it's not typically from exposure, and it's not limited to individuals who are unhoused.
Sure.
I can tell you that in the past couple of winters, when we have those days in January where it's 20 below and, and it's 30-mile-per-hour winds, city staff, outreach staff, everyone goes out and encourages people to come inside in one way or another. And we have pretty good luck with the vast majority of individuals, but there are a handful of individuals that, regardless of the conditions, have been unwilling for whatever reason to come inside. So for individuals, for example, pets oftentimes are a barrier for someone to go inside. We've actually made arrangements with local animal care facilities, and we will board the animals for a day or 2 days or whatever it is, so that people know their animal is safe. But for those of us who have animals, and for those of us who may view that as our support, that's just not a choice. But we do try to make every opportunity available to make sure that people have a choice to come inside, or an opportunity to come inside.
Thank you.
Yep. I think I have maybe a more procedural timeline type question. We had the director of homeless response here at the end of
Yep.
September. And at no time was there any mention of discussions about closing the encampment. So I
Nope.
think I would like to know how long that conversation had been going on for, who was involved with that discussion. I think for most of us, the first that we learned of it may have been in the Bangor Daily.
Yep.
So what was that lead up to that?
So we've had that conversation among community partners and service providers for probably a month or two before that, recognizing that we had sort of a unique opportunity, that we have 41, we are never gonna have 41 units. I'm not gonna say never. It's going to be a while before we have 41 units of permanent supportive housing come online again.
And sorry, can you just clarify, is
Yeah.
that coming on? When are
It's
the-
anticipated to be on by December 31st,
Okay,
or at December 31st, which is kind of how we aligned our.
okay. And sorry, can I just
Yeah.
interrupt this whole process? Just like, will the app, so I'm assuming there's gonna be an application process, and will
Yep.
that all be in the works before
Yeah,
the 31st?
Had that meeting this week, yeah.
Okay, just,
Yeah, so they're working through that. So obviously it's still under construction.
yeah,
It is funded in a new funding stream, so they're working through all of that. But yes,
okay.
that's our goal. But in the meantime, we still have opportunities. And the opportunities are to continue to engage. And if you get one or two folks in, and frankly, getting one or two or three folks in this week and making sure that they have the supports they need and connecting them and using that as an opportunity to go, oh, we need somebody who's able to do X, Y, Z, whatever it is good. And, you know, we have 10 weeks, and if we can move 3 or 4 folks at a time, a week, that's great, whatever that looks like.
So when you were meeting with the community, you know, the different members of the community, was it a group decision? Is it one person who ultimately made that decision?
So I would say it was a collective, as we have an opportunity, we can make this a community priority. And this feels like, if we never made it a community priority and we never created a sense of urgency, I'm not sure we would have had 70 individuals participating in a Zoom, in a partners meeting. Everybody is, all of the organizations they're all doing the best they can every day. And there's not a lot of excess capacity. So really, this was kind of the HUD way as well, is you set a date and you create a sense of urgency and you make it a priority. And you have a timeline, and it helps us maintain that sense of urgency. And setting it as a priority.
So is city council also aware of these conversations behind the scenes? This memo?
They know that we've been talking about how we're gonna resolve and kind of come to a solution for those in the encampment. I mean, we've talked about that publicly. I can't tell you how many times. So they saw the memo when it went out on that Friday, just like everybody else did.
Any other discussion around the encampment? All right, seeing none, let's move on to number
Thank you.
3 on the agenda, which is a review of the naming of city-owned property policy. That was something that was brought up in the last meeting. We asked everyone to review it by October 15th, and I think Katie, you had passed along some suggestions, and that's in today's packet, correct?
Correct.
A lot of red on there, my friend.
It just, had some, do you want me to talk about?
Sure, why don't we talk about your
Okay, so this policy, I think the last time it had been reviewed was like 2015.
When it was written.
Oh, it was written.
Well, no, it might have been written before then, but yes.
And really my understanding of this policy is to identify what we are going to focus on as a city when naming property. And really that boils down to, you know, what is the impetus for this building or land being available? What, you know, would, and I don't know if you'd rather speak to this.
No.
You know, is that an individual that we're naming it after? Is it a group that we're naming it after? And what should the parameters be? And so I thought it was a really great thought exercise just to really think about the processes that not only the city uses, but individuals on the whole use, universities. I think we've learned a lot in the past, especially 4 years, about the slippery slope that naming places and structures after people, and how quickly that can turn with new information that becomes available as we all grow and evolve as a society. So being able to make recommendations on this policy about, you know, what does that vetting process look like? Are we tied to naming things after individuals, or is that a practice we should maybe do away with? Because it is, in my mind, a dangerous policy. Because we don't know what we don't know. And again, as our community and our society continues to evolve, we've gotten, it's been a challenge to remove some names and rename things. The other big piece of this was that there wasn't anything in the policy that was mindful about the land that these structures are actually on, and the honestly true ownership of the land, which is the Wabanaki tribes. And so being mindful about maybe leaning toward that naming procedure, when we're looking at naming structures or land places and really making sure that it lends itself to, you know, the true name of the places that we're using. I don't know if that sort of like covers it.
I think the changes that you put forth were really good and
Yeah.
appropriate. I don't know if anyone else, out on Zoom land had any thoughts on the suggestions that Katie put forth or anything else that may have come up since then? See nothing.
And I think that in addition to what Katie had suggested, Courtney and I had added some additional provisions as well. So making sure that any naming opportunities comes back through this committee.
Yeah, thank you.
And that there's an
Saw that.
opportunity, to conduct outreach, invite public comment.
Yes,
And feedback to ensure that the proposed name is culturally appropriate and respectful.
yes, awesome.
Thought that was a nice.
Yeah.
and That really is work that falls within this committee's purview. So that was an add for us. The only other, kind of changes that probably Courtney and I added to it was, you know, making sure that we are thoughtful about honoring traditionally underrepresented communities
Yeah.
and minorities.
Yeah,
And then further, the only odd thing that we kind of threw in that may feel a little bit of out of whack is up at the top under purpose, is to make sure that we exclude this from potential naming rights. So for example, the Cross Center, there's a naming rights agreement with that. And if we're gonna talk about a new Parks and Rec facility,
Mhm.
that may be a way that you look to help finance and fund some of those
Yeah.
things. So just being thoughtful that if the property would be subject to a naming rights,
That
that
makes
this provision would not. And obviously, if there are naming rights, those contracts are separately approved in a public way, so,
got it.
so it wouldn't just pop up as.
Any other discussion on this policy? So from here, where does this?
So what we will do is we will pull this together and we will submit it to the Government Operations Committee. And trying to think if that will be on, in case you don't know, we're in the midst of an election.
Oh, yeah.
So it becomes a little awkward to have this current sitting committee
Yeah, right?
review a policy that would be voted on by a new council.
Yeah,
So, it's likely that this would go to GovOps on December 2nd,
okay.
okay?
Okay, so next on the
Oh,
agenda.
sorry, I have questions.
Yeah.
Um,
Katie?
Thank you. So I believe it was the last meeting with this policy.
Yep,
That's all the streets and
Yes.
everything, yeah.
yep, it's in there in the back.
So what is our purview with the current names that we have? The streets and,
I think what we were
Places and-
hoping for is that the committee and the members would review the street names
okay,
and look at them through the lens of culturally appropriate and respectful. I scanned down through them. I did not see that
Okay.
we had streets named in a way that
Got
may be
it.
offensive in some way.
okay.
And I think that's what we're, because if you
I
think
think
about
I
it, the
missed that
state of.
piece of the assignment.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, when are we gonna get to do that?
Okay.
I feel like that's something that would be worth probably talking to a local historian about.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've got one of those. The library would probably be the place to go.
Or the
Bangor is historical.
Or,
Yeah, them.
or there is, Dick. I can see him. He was just on the news with the Brady gang.
Oh, I don't know his name, but I
Shaw.
saw that.
Dick
Yes.
Shaw.
Dick Shaw.
Dick Shaw. He was a longtime employee of the BDN, has an incredible amount of history as well. And he's always willing to kind of, you know, participate and volunteer. But I think that was the goal. The goal was you know, if you look at it, the state really took an effort to rename a lot of places.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And it's just never a step that we as a city took,
Yeah,
so.
Yeah.
I mean,
put
where
the
some of
street-
these are just generic names, like there's not a lot that you can add,
Yeah.
see like. or
I was
Jennifer.
I couldn't find anything that was like overtly offensive in any way, and I really strained to find something. The only thing I come up with was the sort of the generic names that we just said, the like dog park, or community garden, or just things that like they just look like there might be some opportunities to like honor something alongside that. And so that might be a good test case for the naming policy after it's all moved through the governance. And hey, like maybe we can get creative, and maybe that creativity can align with sort of the mission of this committee. Like
Yeah.
it could be an underrepresented group, some historical depth that we're unaware of. That's where I see an opportunity potentially. And also just like one thing that I know UMaine does and other communities do is that they'll double name places. And so you'll have both the name of the building, then you'll have the name in Wabanaki underneath it as well. So
I do love that.
I do too.
And I think that is so
Definitely,
incredibly
yes.
important.
and like there's a list of like city-owned streets. That would be a place where we could utilize that.
Yeah.
And city-owned buildings.
I would be interested in like, obviously, we all are sitting here assuming it's just gonna be an exorbitant cost, but what is the cost?
I have no
Yeah,
idea.
That would be a curious
Yes,
thing.
we have a
to
lot of
explore.
street signs.
Yes.
So,
But to that point, it could even just
Legal
be.
maker.
It could be an exercise, connecting with the Wabanaki and just saying,
Mhm.
let's focus
Right.
first on downtown.
correct. And I think what I can do too is I will circle up with our engineering folks. Because our engineering folks were working with Wabanaki on specifically the plantings and things that are going to be going into Pickering Square, which now won't be going in until spring because, nothing's gonna grow this time of year. So we can certainly circle back on what that looks like, and I believe that there was an opportunity for signage that was reflective of the Wabanaki language,
Yeah.
especially the K. And an educational opportunity.
I think it's also a really awesome opportunity in thinking about developing a committee of historians, subject matter experts, underrepresented communities, if we were to take Bangor Community Gardens and say,
Correct.
like, what subcommittee could spearhead that? Is this like the education group where we sit down and we bring those subject matter experts together and we say, let's rename this in a really thoughtful
Right.
way based on where it is and,
Yep.
who's involved and who participates in that space.
And like the one thing that I worry about when it comes to renaming things like streets is we do have an aging population.
Correct.
Yeah, and the amount of confusion that
That's
could
true.
cause.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't think renaming,
Yeah.
because everything feels pretty,
Correct. I think
Generic,
our
but
goal
if
was
we
to make
were
sure
to-
that we weren't inadvertently
yeah.
continuing
Yeah.
to.
If we were to explore something though, I would love to have like Fern Street, like just post Fern Street with the Wabanaki name under.
Yeah,
it.
I
Like,
like
that would
that
be the.
idea.
And I do think that may be to your point. I think with the presence that Wabanaki has downtown
Mhm.
and kind of the growth of, we've got now the
Yeah.
street art. And we're looking at Pickering Square.
Yeah,
I think there are some opportunities, and some of that falls within the cultural commission as well. So I
Yeah.
think there's some nice overlap between the two.
maybe that's what we
Yeah.
do. Maybe we create a
I like
meeting
that
with the
idea.
cultural committee to explore that.
And I know we're jumping ahead on the agenda, but I feel like one of the new members coming in actually is on cultural committee or commission. I'm not positive. I thought that's what I had heard he was. That might be the opportunity to make that movement on that. But I think starting downtown is the most logical.
Yeah,
Correct.
especially
Where we
along
already
that
got
path
foothold.
to the river.
Yeah.
Correct.
Catherine, I thought I saw you have your hand up. Do you still?
You guys all kind of just said what I was thinking. I love the idea of a historical or historian to kind of help. I was gonna say the Wabanaki Center, and having some more input on street naming and making sure that we abide by, you know, cultural intent. So I agree to everything that was just said. That's all I was-
Cool, thank you.
But I do feel very novice, like when I was trying to look at those, I felt very novice and I felt very like almost guilty if I missed something. So I like the idea of reaching out to the other
Yeah.
commission, and because especially things would have names of people in them. I don't know the history of those people. So
Maybe someone could create a. Don't know who this would be. But, a database of just that, which is that name. And if there is something attached to it,
Yeah,
you
I would
know,
love
so
that.
that it's not necessarily a revisit.
My,
of the
my
existing
assumption
names.
must be that it must exist.
Something somewhere.
I would think so.
But what a great project for like a student or
Correct.
a student group too.
Mhm.
Because does anybody know what Pickering Square, who I'm assuming Mr. Pickering is?
I do not know.
Oh,
And that's where the Bangor Historical Society could come in.
yeah,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying is once you have that data, database set, you know, of that information, you can then just start adding the pieces of like, adding Wabanaki or other potentially could create also like a repository of potential names, you
I think
know,
that'd be
assuming no
really-
naming rights, but like things that have, might come
Yeah.
up when these naming opportunities come up. That way it doesn't necessarily feel thrown at us, which happens.
No, but
But
lots
if we
of,
have things already in the pipeline.
and lots of times when something comes up, typically when a question or a request has come up to name something, it's typically a person who has a particular connection to an area.
Sure.
It's almost always tied to an
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
It is rarely sort of a generic,
Just.
it's because it meant something to them as a
Yeah.
person.
yeah,
At some point in their life, or they contributed in a way that made a particular area.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
much better, whatever it may be. So the one example I can give you as a hockey mom
Mhm.
is Sawyer Arena.
Mhm.
So Sawyer Arena is named Sawyer Arena because at the time Tom Sawyer donated a bunch of money.
Yeah.
yeah. I
To
think
put a
that's what we
building
all
up.
always assume.
So,
Mhm.
on the flip side, you know, we have Talbot Park, who was named for Gerald Talbot
Mhm.
and all of the amazing work that he did in his lifetime. And that area was chosen as it was close to, his childhood home and his family home.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
I think it's always good to have a connection
oh, absolutely.
back and not just sort of a,
Yeah.
I'm gonna name this for.
Yeah, and I think the policy does a
Yeah.
good job of,
Correct, trying to
identifying
put those
that.
parameters in.
yeah,
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, we've named things before that we've had to unname.
yeah, oh, yeah.
And so getting ahead of that
Mhm.
is kind of what the whole point of the policy is.
Yeah,
You know, let's learn from our mistakes.
You feel good?
I'm good, thank you.
Alrighty. So number 4, state of the committee, future planning. I think we agreed we're gonna parking lot, a review of the ordinance
Okay.
till the next meeting so that we can have, Kara Pelletier come in. And I know Melissa also wanted to be part
Yeah.
of the discussion as well, so please make sure you're attending the November meeting so we can dig deeper into ideas like the actual naming, the ordinance itself, if there's other things that should be brought forth to, help progress this committee along.
And I have one request if I could. So,
Yes.
so my request would, especially from our Zoom participants, knowing that time is fleeting, for a couple of our members and knowing that Catherine may be otherwise engaged here. I'd really ask you if sometime between now and the next meeting, if you have thoughts, if you can spend a little bit of time looking at the ordinance and send those along, then I can make sure to incorporate them and it may get us on a good start.
And I'm actually gonna say, let's create a date. to
Okay.
Get that in by. I
Yep,
think that
And I can
helps
follow
things
up,
along.
yeah.
can I ask for clarification on that, please?
Sure.
What exactly do you want us to do with the ordinance? Like just
So,
the thoughts,
yeah, so a lot of the discussion, is coming out of the fact that it's an advisory committee. So what can we, what can't we do?
That
How
topic.
many people do we have on there? Can we have volunteers? All of these things are things that have been coming up recently in an attempt to help get the work done. Because we've been having issues with like attendance. Or someone brought up, they felt like it's more us listening. So how do we get more engagement? Trying to find that balance of proactive and reactive, that flexibility. So, what it keeps going back to is the ordinance, the language of the ordinance and when it was created 4 years ago and what the intent was 4 years and what we've learned over that time.
Correct.
And how we see it moving forward.
And I think it's important to keep in mind too, and correct me if I'm wrong, that an advisory committee in and of itself is limiting. Because we are just advising versus being a full committee or.
Well, but it's no different than any other citizen appointed committee. So authority rests with the Bangor City Council.
Yeah.
I mean, authority rests with the elected officials.
Mhm.
Can there be, so for me, this naming policy was like an aha, it's like, perfect, this is right up and this is where we should have
Yeah.
been.
Yeah,
And there has to be some other opportunities to do that.
yeah, there does have to be other opportunities to
Correct.
do that. I don't know if it's because. I was always under the impression that a lot of our ability to like pull other people in or drive some movement or even, be able to allocate, funds and resources in a certain way. Like we're always comparing ourselves, I think, to the cultural commission, and that's very different. But is it because of the ordinance or is it because?
So, but the cultural commission makes recommendations that
Yeah,
are acted upon by the city council.
yeah, but they're still able to like give funds to different projects.
Right,
and-
because that was what, at the time, it used to be that the council, so prior to the creation of the cultural commission, there were all of these asks that came through the city council.
Mhm.
So there's always been a pot of money.
Yeah,
And so what the city council said is, we're going to allow the cultural commission to vet these and make a recommendation to the council committee. So it wasn't a new pot of money, it was an existing pot of money. And if there is money in our budget,
yeah,
I do have money,
Yeah.
but it's, what do you want to do with it?
yeah.
I mean, the cultural commission had a very specific charge. You're gonna do grants for X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Because investing in culture is important to us as a community.
So if we were to say, we would love to explore opportunities to evaluate, accessibility needs that exist in the city, and then we're
Correct.
going to have,
Yes,
I can already see what the answers are gonna be to these questions that I have, but I'm just thinking, if we were able to provide assistance
Yes.
to, city, businesses or housing units that needed, that wouldn't be covered by the state, like, is that something that we could, you know what I mean, like, that we could be a little bit more creative in either allocating, like, I know I'm getting into a whole grant process and funding, and I can see your eyes.
no, I'm not trying to give you eyes, like, yesterday was a long day, I'm not trying to
I
give
know,
you
you're
eyes.
not trying to, I'm just trying to, I really.
So give me a particular example, tell me, like, one thing you'd wanna do.
I know, but I, like I said, I already know what you're gonna say.
No, just tell me one thing.
I, for instance, would love if we were to, do an accessibility audit of the different downtown businesses. And, yes, there are definitely gonna be some steps have a gap. And I know that there's funds available for that already that exist.
Correct.
But what if there are elements that they would love to do that don't have? What if they would love to have I don't know, like a talk to text menu available for folks that were gonna be able to come in? Could they apply for a grant from if we had funds available,
Yeah.
that they could say, this would make my restaurant
Yeah.
so much more accessible to folks, and this is why, and this is how I could do it. Like, if we were to be creative in ways that we know that people want to do things to make people come into their businesses or make their units more accessible and available, or parks. Like, you know, and I know, again, there are pockets of funds for all of these things, and it's easy to allocate and say that's not us, but what if it
Understood, but it feels
was?
dispersed.
Yeah. What if it could be?
Right, and I guess if the committee wants to define ensuring accessibility as one of its goals, then I think that's the way to do that is through the ordinance. Is updating sort of
Got it.
what the
That's,
parameters are of the work you're gonna do. And if
Okay,
you want to
that's-
move to a more performative space, I think the ordinance needs to reflect that.
okay. So that's, I guess was my question, was
Right.
how do? Yeah,
Here's what I'm gonna ask everyone to do,
Think
is to
about
put
that.
together all your thoughts, questions, ideas, anything that you have. If you could get it to Debbie by November 15th, that would be ideal, so that we can kind of
Yep.
bring all the thoughts and ideas together. That doesn't mean you can't get it in later, but what we
Right.
discovered is we're very busy people trying to get all of us together to get everything together. It takes a hot minute.
Yeah.
But be thoughtful about what it is that you think needs to be changed about this. And know that there has been 4 years of ongoing change and development to this. And I've said at every meeting is that this is not a 1 mile or a 5K. This is a marathon. So this is not something where one change is gonna fix everything. You know, it's still, you know, I think some of the things that I've thought about, and I don't know how you put it in there, which is how do you encourage people to attend every single meeting? Or how do you encourage
Right.
people to take the meeting with an outside entity to bring it back here? You know, those sort of things. Can you get that into ordinance language? Who knows? But those are the things, like, that's what we should be thinking too. Is this ordinance too restrictive? Can we, and what are the, you know, and that's, so part of this is, we're gonna have someone from city council come in to discuss this, to talk about what the ordinance is. If there are changes that I've agreed upon, what that process looks like. And I don't think it's something that will be solved in one meeting by any stretch of the imagination, because I've been chair almost 2 years and we've been at this for 2 years. So that would be my request of everyone, would be to really look at all of that.
And sorry, and just so we don't lose it. So Katie, didn't we like come across like like a good name? Like we had a moment where like we threw like a good
we
name.
did.
I forgot what it was, but it's very
DE
short and punchy.
DEIB Action Committee.
Right. So my program at the University of Maine, it's we're doing the same thing because it's if you get a degree in my program, it's a Master of Arts in Interdisciplinary Studies with a concentration in Peace and Reconciliation Studies. This is what's on your diploma. And we're finding that people don't want to do the program because it's hard to explain. And so we're just gonna call it Peace Studies and then make it a whole separate thing from interdisciplinary studies. So there's a whole conversation around that. Like
Yeah,
and,
this is
and
exactly.
not because the former name was not accurate, it's the most accurate, but like it's not attractive, it's cumbersome. And I like the idea of us like doing something like pretty punchy.
Yeah,
So submit all your ideas, any questions.
I like
highlight
that.
Language and bring it all together, send it off to Debbie, okay? That way we can go into it, you know, with a good foundation for conversation. Okay? Not that I'm trying to move everyone along,
you
but
are.
I
You still have
I
some
know
questions.
Andre.
We gotta pull it
in. This is a committee that definitely can get lost in talk.
No, but I just feel like advisory was like the biggest pushback, the word. For like the first 2 years I was on this committee. The
Oh,
word
but no,
advisory.
no, there are bigger issues before.
But I feel like that is what has hamstringed us. The
And
word
so-
advisory.
And I think, you know, whenever you started, when this all began,
Mhm.
there was no school DEIB committee.
Yeah,
You know, and it was really a way to sort of try to bridge the concerns. The concerns really were coming from the school department, and it made us all take a step back and say, hey, this isn't
you're right.
a school department issue, it's a community issue.
Yeah,
So I think they tried to fit. They named it and they created the ordinance in the best way they could at that particular time.
okay.
A lot has changed since
A
then.
lot has changed.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I just feel like my only question is, So if we submit, like, is that even on the table? Like, just taking,
Yes.
okay, thank you,
Yes. Yeah.
thank you.
And I think,
Cause it felt like for so long, it was like, that's not what this committee is. It
but I
does.
also think that the name to me is like,
Okay,
what the hell?
yeah,
I mean,
okay,
it's just not reflective of,
yeah, the
where
work,
we are
like the
today.
action, sure.
correct.
Thank you. I appreciate you just confirming that out loud, because like, I know that I'm beating this dead horse, but it does feel like that has always been we talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and it's like, but we can't, because that's not what this committee does, because we're in this limited advisory scope. So if that's up for exploration, then let's go for it. Feedback
Let's be
on
wild.
November 15th.
Let's go big.
Got
Yeah,
it.
so we'll
It's
have like
always
that.
easier to bring things back than to push things out. So-
DEIB Action Committee.
Andre, did you need to leave at 7?
I was just waiting for a pause, let everybody know. So thanks, great meeting. And I'll look forward to that email with stuff, and we'll be in touch. We'll see you next month.
Thanks, Andre.
Thanks, Andre.
Okay, so yes, we'll have someone from city council
Okay.
here. We'll bring all that stuff together.
Okay.
You know, and one of the things that, that we were, that's come up in previous conversation is the fact that it will be again, a different makeup of a city council than those
Right.
who even created it initially.
Yeah.
And, you know, and who's gonna be on it now going forward.
Correct.
You know, so that's, you know, always a part of any committee is the ever-changing composite of anything and everything, you know, so whatever we bring forth. You know, just bear that, you know, tuck that nugget in the back of your mind. Update on the appointment process. Would you like to take this, Debbie?
Sure, so thank you, Vice Chair Bryden, for signing up for another
Oh,
3-year
yeah.
term.
Oh my God,
You
what
have
did I
been
do?
reappointed, I understand. We also have 2 new members who have been appointed to 3-year terms, Mark Roth and Shane Boyce, both of whom we will make sure to invite to the December meeting as sort of an introductory opportunity. We still have current vacancies for a high school student, higher learning student, and 1 regular member, but the city clerk continues to accept applications. As you can imagine right now, we're not really looking at that kind of thing because it's all things election. But after
The clerk is
the
bored.
clerk is crazy.
Send her.
The clerk is correct, it's just, but it's all good. We have really good turnout. I think yesterday I had heard, this was sometime around 6 o'clock, that we had about 600 people vote in person at the Cross Center yesterday. And we had 100 people still voting here.
Yeah,
So, so while we're talking elections, I'm just gonna throw it out there. A lot of folks like to use that early voting option.
Yeah,
You can only request your ballot through this Thursday. So on Friday, November 1st, you are no longer able to request a ballot and walk in like you can right now.
okay.
So just be mindful of that. And then the polls will open Tuesday.
okay, I'm also going to take the subcommittee structure and parking
Yeah,
off
and
that,
perfect, yeah, I get it.
to the.
No, it's all that.
Previous stuff, so that
Yep.
will make that a one big hot topic for
Yep.
everyone. Number 5, under other items, volunteers to work, MLK Day organizer. I think this is both Debbie and Katie.
Mm-hmm. That, I'm just looking for my notes, other items, okay. Debbie, I feel we'd had the same, conversation, but I think that yours got a little bit further with Samantha Lee.
I did not, it was a message I had from her.
Oh, okay. There is, an individual, hold on 1 second. Let me see, I'm so sorry, I should have pulled
You
this
got me
up.
that too.
Okay, so this is the email that, I received on behalf of this committee. I think someone just gave her my email. But, this email is from Samantha Lee. She is a member of the Greater Bangor Area NAACP. And they are planning their annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Breakfast celebration. And they are looking at venues right now. she wanted to know if our committee would be interested in co-sponsoring. And so I shared with her that this is conversation, obviously, we would need to have with the group during our October meeting. And she did ask again, you know, in determining what the venue would be and what that would look like. Will Bangor City Council endorse the event? Because they want it to be a joint event with the city of Bangor. That is all the information that I have.
Okay. I had not spoken to her.
Okay.
But when Katie and I were emailing, and we
Yeah.
had our epiphany that it was the
The
same person.
person.
So I think, the Martin Luther King, celebrations is something that we've tried to find, a way into and a way to support and raise up in the past. And we did previously, one of our members was, part of the leadership of the
Yeah.
NAACP. So it's good to hear that there's somebody new. I'm happy
Yeah.
to connect with her and get more details. Because, and then perhaps we can have 2 or 3 folks from the committee who are willing to kind
Yeah.
of work with and maybe do an introductory or whatever it may be. Does that feel?
I would love that. I guess my question is, I think that I'm gonna speak for all of us that we would happily
Yeah,
endorse and
okay.
support in any way. What does that mean, though? Is it like, hey, let's help you plan, or is it, hey, let's use the money?
Well, we
or-
don't know yet. We don't know
Okay,
yet.
all right.
And Katie, maybe since Samantha reached
Yeah.
out to you, is maybe that you and I can get on a conference call with her
Oh, sure.
and kind of talk through that a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then if there's additional work, perhaps we can bring in some
Yeah,
other
cause
committee
it's
members.
right around the corner, so.
Correct.
One, it's not even.
But I
Get
thought
through
that-
Halloween and then we can.
But what I will say is what it shows is, I think Leanna, you've referenced it before, you know, people don't know we're here. Well, clearly
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah,
The fact that now there's outreach occurring.
yeah, that's exciting.
To me says, you know, that
Because you did
we're
that.
starting to grab traction, which is
Right.
good,
It takes time.
correct?
All right. I will definitely do that. I mean, I'm sorry, I know that I literally said I'm gonna speak for everyone, but do we need to vote? I mean, I know I'm.
Is everybody
making
supportive of
Sweeping
that?
generalizations that this committee would be interested in supporting the Martin Luther King Jr. breakfast.
I feel like if they're against it, maybe they're on the.
I think it was a pretty safe assumption. Katie.
Okay.
Well, and I mean, the truth of the matter is, it's getting more information, so.
Yeah.
Right, I mean.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's true.
We don't know at what level, learning more. Okay, review of place name.
We kind of skipped over that already.
We did, but.
So
also
do we
have-
need to follow up? Does somebody want to reach out to the Bangor Historical Society to see if they have interest?
Does anyone have
doing
a
it?
connection to the Historical Society currently? The one person you longer lives here, so.
I do.
Debbie. If you wanna, contact them and maybe
Yep.
include Katie and I on it initially.
Yep.
And then we can. Piece out the info there.
Yeah.
And if
And I'm
someone's a
not
particular
sure that they're the
interest-
right reference point.
Yeah,
Start
And to
somewhere.
your point, it may be the Bangor, you know, it may be the reference librarian and the
Mhm.
historical librarian through Ben Tree
Yeah.
and his staff. They're kind of ingenious over there too.
Yeah.
I'm actually thinking that maybe it may start with the library.
Yeah, I
Just
feel like,
because they may have access to some databases kind of
Yeah.
along the line of what we were
Right.
talking about.
yeah, and the other thing that I'm thinking of too, just with the Bangor Historical Society, they would probably be the best ones to go to just right off the bat and ask, is there any place in Bangor
Right.
that has a problematic, like a
Right.
name that's affiliated with
Yep.
someone who is
Yep.
problematic
Yeah.
in a way that we do not want? And they might be able to do like a quick run through, and then if we wanted to get like further details, probably go to
Right.
the library,
Yeah.
because they would have the
Oh, good
extensive
point.
database on that information, but I mean, unless there are like huge concerns for any specific places
Right.
in town, I don't really think we should really be focusing on changing like
Mhm.
names
No.
of that are established, like street
Correct.
names and
Yeah.
No, I
stuff
think,
like that, just,
I
but,
think this was step
but
one.
like new places.
Correct, yeah.
And like I love the idea of, you know, this trail that's being built.
Mhm.
And over time, we can look at renaming other things as they get renovated and updated and, you know, they're kind of taken away from the original that they were initially, like Pickering Square has undergone so many transformations.
I think I see this
So-
as a kind of it's a multi-phase piece, which is one, kind of getting the history of
Yeah.
all the streets. Identifying the problematic ones during that process, you know, if we
Yeah.
can or whatever. And then, you know, how that aligns with, you know, the city policy that we just looked at, you know, and maybe the historical society has other names in that could be, if they're not already, you
And
know, type thing.
And if we were to move forward with doing that, we would obviously, like, it'd be really important to get community involvement
Correct.
on that. So like, I know we talked about that already, but like, you know, getting like some approved names that might be better. And then maybe even going and talking to the people in that street.
Right.
And or hosting a meeting for people in that community who would be the
I
most
love that.
affected
Correct.
by, like, you know, their address getting changed.
Correct.
Yeah,
I
don't
love-
want it to be non-consensual.
Jason?
Yeah, just a thought. So we have a policy around naming, and then I'm wondering if it would be helpful for us to think about what would be the specific criteria or policy for unnaming. And we're using a word right now, called problematic, and I can say for certain in academic circles, the word problematic can mean different things to different people, and so I'm wondering if that's something we might want to put some energy into at some point. Like what's the process of doing that?
Of the unnaming.
So it sounds like this isn't even gonna go to GovOps till December 2nd. There's a little more time to look at that, putting that in there.
Right, so and I think so to your point, we have multiple, I kind of view it as related but dissimilar.
Mhm.
Our issue is we want to make sure that if we're naming city places, that we are thoughtful and
Mhm.
culturally appropriate and respectful in those names. So to me, I think the policy, to add to Jason's point is, I think the action I think we referred to it as de-ascension, if I remember correctly, because we had to do that for a park along Broad Street
Yeah.
when information was brought forward by the Wabanaki
Mhm.
about the actions
Yeah,
of the individuals
Yeah.
and that were related to the
Ascension.
original name. I think it was de-ascension.
So we could build that into something in the
right.
policy.
But but I think if we have a naming policy, I think the important thing is we set the parameters for naming.
Mhm.
And then maybe we have a provision where if names are being culturally inappropriate or disrespectful, that there's a mechanism that we refer back to.
Jason?
That was my thinking face.
Okay.
That makes so Deb, to your point, like in the policy itself, like the policy is clear enough to where a de-ascension process can be implied or inferred from the language in the policy itself. We don't have to create a whole new.
I'll look at it again and I'll go back and look and see if there's a place, but I always like to have sort of a policy that is positive and forward propelling. But I also recognize the need that in any policy, you gotta have a way for an aggrieved or an inappropriate issue to come forward.
Oh, like
Like-
like a grievance policy, sort of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the event that a grievance is brought forth.
Or an
Or
agree,
they-
or how the concern is
Yeah.
raised and where it goes back to.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah. And then for me, the streets piece is just reviewing it to see, and
Yeah.
I get what Catherine is sharing, that she feels really, am I the right lens to kind of be looking at that? But I think if we have 8 lenses looking at it,
yeah,
and folks are comfortable that they are not seeing any
Yeah.
existing
Mhm.
street names or I included the Parks and Rec facilities because that has, I know that there was a request for, city buildings and structures. Most of our named structures and facilities are tied to Parks and Rec, so that was kind of the easy one to pull together. The only other two I can think of that we have, because we pulled the street names from our GIS database.
Yeah.
The place names, if you will, are not embedded in our GIS in the same way because they're used for two different
Yeah.
purposes.
Yeah,
So the Parks and Rec site has a pretty robust list of places. So that's where we're able to pull it from. The only other two named places that I can think of, but I'll ask the department heads at their next meeting, is our domestic terminal is named for, our longtime airport director who kind of shepherded the airport from going from a military base to a commercial airport.
Mhm.
And that was Peter DeRico. And I believe that there is a dedication or recognition of Don Winslow on our police department, who was a long-term, Bangor police officer and a long-time serving, Bangor police chief. But it's not that the building is named that, I believe it's just I walk by the sign, I should pay attention to what it
Yeah.
says, but I think it's a recognition or a
Okay.
dedication to him.
You know,
So the building itself isn't known as the Don Winslow Police
right,
Station.
right.
we're talking about building a webpage, the webpage and all these things, if we actually get to that point where we do start using, Wabanaki,
Yep.
as Harvard, I think that is something that would be interesting to have on our webpage, to have, street names with the
Yeah.
name and what that word means, because I do think that is,
Yeah, right.
people in the area would want to know. So I think, again, so I don't see this as a short-term project, I
No.
see this as one of these.
No, but I
that we
think
all.
the first step is, let's just be sure that we are not
I do think.
currently utilizing names that would be defensive, disrespectful, or derogatory in some way.
So I do,
And I can say, looking at them, I didn't see one,
Yeah.
but that's just my perception.
Right.
And I think if all 8 of us could have the same
Yeah.
perception, I think we'd have,
to that point, I think if we can have Bangor Historical Society
Yeah.
put eyes on it,
Yeah.
just to verify.
We get the
that's the case.
professionals to see it.
Yeah.
I think that's what we should.
I can do
Just
that.
to ensure that those
Yeah.
with the history.
Yeah.
Literal.
and at the same time, I may have to ask them, to tell me about Pickering Square.
There you go.
Because now you've put it in it's not that it wasn't in my brain.
Are we good to move on to manager updates?
Yes,
Good.
and I don't think I have any. Because it's been kind of as we work to finish up the council year, it's kind of been a whirlwind week of getting a bunch of things done.
Yeah.
I think a lot of what we're doing is, obviously we're spending time, trying to work through the process for the encampment closure. We have an upcoming election and getting prepared for that. And, I would suggest that, we did do, last night, we did for the last 2 or 3 years, we've done sort of a council year in review. And we have 4 pages of work that was actually done. As Member Bryden may know,
Yeah.
oftentimes you're hearing from people who are not happy or who want something changed. And that's obviously what we're here for, but
Uh-huh.
sometimes you kind of lose track of all of the good
Nice
work
to
you did in a
celebrate.
year.
Yeah.
So there's a 4-page, it's right on the homepage. And, we highlight the priority of housing and all of the work that we've done on housing. And we've done a lot of other cool things, so public
That's cool.
transit passengers are up over 550,000 last year. Passengers at the airport are 700,000. We had 200,000 at the Cross Center. We had 200,000 at waterfront concerts. We had 2,200 come in on cruise lines. So, we have a lot of good things.
Yeah.
I think we had 4,000, so right around 50,000 calls for public safety.
Wow.
That's a lot of calls.
Mhm.
Yeah.
A lot of calls. But we closed out, for example, I think it's about 2,600 work orders through public services. So for anybody who does not use the online service request,
Mm-hmm.
please do. It's 2,600 items or issues that were addressed in the community. Somebody didn't have to pick up a phone, somebody didn't have to answer a phone, and you get information back when your item's been addressed. So
Uh,
Love that.
that reminds me.
Yes.
Last year at this time, we had a pretty, well, in December, we had a pretty significant storm that came through and knocked out power.
Yep.
And the city was going to start conversations with Versant to see an outcome of that. So
Yep.
we're heading into another winter
Yep.
season. What does that look like?
So we had one conversation with them
One.
earlier this year,
Okay.
yes. And for those of you who don't know, we're in the process of hiring a new fire chief.
Oh, okay.
So
Mm-hmm.
that will be the next connection that we make once we get through that process. Because I agree.
So would you, so it doesn't sound like anything much came from that one meeting?
You know, we talked to them about the fact that they need to message differently.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to
Yeah.
clearly share. So for example, what they always do is if you pull up an outage, it says under investigation. Like,
Mhm.
well, it isn't under investigation. They're building the grid back and they have to start on Broadway to build it back to get here. Great. Why don't you just say that? Just say.
Yeah. Mhm.
So is this city have a backup plan in the event that Versant does not do that?
We
Or
We
to
have,
repeat?
well, and we did. So last year we were able to get some information directly from the president of Versant. He said, you have got to tell us where you are and what the plan is. So we were getting a little bit more information. And what we did is we would push that out through social media
Mhm.
and try to get folks aware of what was going on. Our fire chief is also our emergency management director.
Mhm.
So part of that role is identifying, so areas that we believe are the riskiest. So for example, if we have, an older mobile home park that is without power, we have a higher concern for that power being restored than we do for some other neighborhoods. Because those mobile homes are likely to get colder faster. And so trying to help prioritize that way. They do have a process that they have to go through. We get they have to rebuild the grid, but we talk to them about you've got to message it differently.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, relying solely on internet is probably not the best idea when
No.
people don't have power.
no, so, and that's kind of, and how we can, so we do have, last year, we had just brought on our new communications manager.
Mhm.
So we are trying to get, information out in a variety of ways, because we recognize people get their information in different ways, so. But you did also make me think about the website.
Okay.
Website is going to, I think Courtney probably shared with you. Did she share with you an update when she was here last month?
She did, but that was a month ago.
Okay, so we are on tracks, both,
Yeah. Yep.
for kind of, we're gonna be a little bit into November.
Okay.
But I have seen it, it looks fabulous. There's gonna be a lot of features that get turned on that aren't currently available, so
Mhm.
we're pretty excited, so.
Awesome.
I hope it's gonna be far more user-friendly and give us some opportunities to do some cool things.
How's the renovation of City Hall going?
I haven't been in lately, so I heard every contractor will tell you, oh, we'll be substantially complete in April, is what they're saying, so. Likely when the new council is seated,
Yeah.
we'll kind of go through and get a better update and go in and see. The last time I was in, it was still a big hole in the floor where they were putting the elevator shaft in.
Oh, thanks. That's very nice.
Anything else? No, I think that's it. Was
Just a reminder, our next meeting is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. So I know sometimes people travel, so I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. But as you can see, we can accommodate Zoom.
That's the
26th. Yeah. And I'll get an email out this week, kind of with the ordinance and some information as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Was there anything else, any other committee member things, anything else, that anyone else wanted to bring up? Did you?
Allow the public to speak?
Huh?
Yeah.
That's her
Come
call.
sit.
Yes.
Come sit.
All right, so I have a question about the ordinance, because the one thing I'm not,
Introduce yourself.
oh yeah, my name is Michael Beck, I'm resident of Bangor. I'm noticing the city council's only mentioned twice throughout this, once they appoint you, and then again, you guys have to give them an annual report, and that's it, there's nothing in the mission, regarding advising them or anything. I think it's a missed opportunity, tonight kind of demonstrated that for me. there's a lot of great supplemental information that was given about the Camp Hope situation because of your great questions. You know, the city manager, you did a great job informing council because you just answered the questions they asked. And just like you answered the question they asked tonight. And I think that city council should be either watching this video or if there's a transcript giving them, this is information they need to know. Because these are 72 Bengal residents that are being displaced. And I would think that, you know, if there was a fire on Third Street and 72 residents were homeless suddenly, they'd want to know around the clock, what are we doing to help these people? So if there's any way to put in here, speaking as a candidate for city council, should I be honored to be elected, I would like to be able to reach out and say, I've got questions. Like, I want to know what you guys think about what we're about to do.
Yeah.
You know, if there's a mechanism for that.
Yeah.
That would be my feedback on that.
That's what I joined the council is thinking our purpose was.
For the record, as the only person on the committee who's been here since the beginning, that was always meant to be the intention, was
Okay.
that
Yeah.
the council would refer things back, would refer things to us. It was supposed to be the intent that we were supposed to have eyes on a lot of things coming through. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen.
Okay.
Sometimes things don't come to us when we feel they should come to us, and that is something, you know, that we do have concerns about and we have discussed before.
Okay.
Is that we feel like probably ARPA is probably the easiest one to go to was, you know, when they started making the decisions, there was, people on the committee who felt very strongly that this committee should have at least seen and offered some input on it. That didn't happen.
Sure.
But there's other times that we've been brought in, the flavored tobacco ban, right? Definitely, we were brought in on that one. There's been other things, Craigie and Craig's in here all the time. You know,
Yeah.
we're always getting updates on those sort of things, but I think we all agree we would like to have more coming
Mhm.
Sure.
into us. For a period of time, we did have, Rick coming to our meetings.
And Joe came a few times.
And Joe used to be on the committee,
Yeah.
you know, was he first? Was he one of the first ones on? with me?
Yeah.
I think so.
And Dina, so there's actually a history of people
Thank
who
you.
are,
And Carol was on the committee.
yep, who started here and made their way there. So,
Okay.
you know, we definitely see that as a benefit for us, but we do think there's more opportunities. for
I would
things to come.
love. But I thought it was really helpful when we had someone,
Mhm.
especially from city council here, and we had direct questions. There was that, you know, feedback. Obviously,
Right.
you have all the information as well.
Not always, not always.
But I do see great value in having a more transparent mechanism between the groups and more, you know.
That's why the city
liaise.
manager specifically, if I remember correctly, it is specifically stated in the ordinance that the city manager
Sits on the
to this committee.
Yep.
And if you are elected, it may be beneficial for you to see the document that we've built over time, which has all of our previous reports, the work that we've done and those sort of things. And that's what we provide to new committee members when they come on, so they can kind of see the history that we're working and building on.
Okay.
Where the work we've done, hopefully where we want to go, our goals for, you know, upcoming years. But, I think if I could speak to it, you know, this committee has struggled right from the get-go with whether or not we're reactive. If we're proactive, can we both, what are our boundaries? And over time, we've worked on taking what the goals were, which were education policy and ordinances, you know, that's why we have these as on our agenda. We always keep those as an open slot so that we don't have to have something every meeting, but if something comes through, we slot it there. We hold space for it, but it allows us that ability. If something urgent comes up to where someone says, we got this, we need to bring it through because it's gonna get read in 2 weeks at this meeting. It does allow us that flexibility to do that. But to what Katie was saying, you know, we do have funding that attributed to this committee held. What can we or can't we use that for? You know, so there's still a lot of defining and growing that is happening in this. And so, you know, we get new members every year, and the dynamic changes and the needs of the city changes. And so the flexibility of our agenda allows for that, but the ordinance also in some ways restricts us too. So that's just kind of.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
Yeah.
Gloves are off.
Leaving that to you.
Well, this is my first time being in person to one of these meetings, but I watch them a lot
Yeah.
online, and this really is a valuable committee. You know, especially when dealing with vulnerable populations, because they don't have a voice. And just in the quality of the questions tonight, I mean, it's so important that we're just aware of these things. So I thank you for your service and
Yeah,
thank you for
thank you.
re-upping. And you're listening.
Yeah.
You're listening. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Thanks. Anything from Jason or Catherine out in Zoom land?
No, thank you. And thank you for acknowledging the work of the committee. That means a lot.
Yeah, thank you, truly.
Yeah, I'll double that. Thank you.
With nothing else, would anyone like to?
Can I just say one thing?
Abby.
Catherine, good luck.
Yes.
Our thoughts and prayers, thoughts and good wishes are with you.
Thank you. Yes, 2.5 weeks and counting. Thank you.
I'm not saying we need an email or anything, but certainly if someone.
Picture.
A picture, we need a
Wait.
picture and the stats.
Does this count? Here's a little squishy face.
Oh my God.
Oh, it's all blurry, but
There you
Oh
go.
my
Nope,
gosh.
nope.
How cute. They didn't have those when I did it, so
Seriously, best of luck with
Yeah.
all of that.
It'll
all be
Everything goes
great.
Well,
enjoy.
all right. Anyone wanna
Move to
close?
adjourn.
Thank you. Second,
Second.
we are done for tonight. Thank you, everyone.